All right, it is 11 o'clock. People should be filtering in over the next few minutes. Yup, there we go. People are already requesting to be added in. 1 second. We're going to go ahead and get started with the webinar. We do have the introductory portion, so that will give people time to filter in. So, hello there. My name is Quentin Russell. I am the content marketing specialist here at Doc365. And today I am going to be covering 5 ways a vendor management system can benefit your business. So taking a look at what we're going to be talking about today. First of all, we're going to be covering the basics of vendor management. Then we're going to move on to talking about what vendor management software does. This is going to be a really simple high-level overview. Nothing too in-depth. I'm not going to be covering the back end, so the actual programming involved in it. Just the functionality that affects users on a day-to-day basis. After that, we'll be taking a look at 5 ways a vendor management system can benefit your business. So specifically taking a look at features that will add to the overall value of your business and help with productivity and your bottom line. Following that, we will be exiting out of the PowerPoint presentation and going into a live demo environment where we will be looking at certain features that you should come to expect from a vendor management system, both in 2020 and into 2021. And at the end of the webinar, we will be doing a question and answer session where I will be doing my best to respond to any questions you may have. If there aren't any, if there are any questions that I am unable to answer, I will do my best to respond to them in the follow-up email. You will be receiving an email later today alongside a recording of today's webinar that you can access at any point in time. So with that said, we're going to really quick talk about us for a second. Who are we? We're Doc365. We're a company located down in Jacksonville, Florida. We have over 17 years of experience working with SharePoint to deliver exceptional productivity solutions. We've experienced working with a wide range of companies in a variety of different industries to implement a wide range of SharePoint productivity tools, including project management systems, contract management systems, vendor management systems, of course, intranets. We also do board meeting systems. We do anything that you can really think of that helps with corporate productivity. We have a tool for it. We work with companies such as Jack's Federal Credit Union. We work with King's Hawaiian. We work with AB&B Federal Credit Union. Just if you have any more questions about who we work with, what we do, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar today. We'd love to have a conversation with you about this. So what is our mission? Well, our mission is to break down silos and develop stronger employee engagement across your organization. Unfortunately, employee engagement has certainly dipped over the last several decades. A recent Gallup poll has come out saying that only around 33 to 35% of employees are actively engaged while in the workplace. That last 60-some% is either unengaged or actively disengaged, which means they're actively not doing their work. That's unacceptable in the corporate world, and we want to help companies eliminate that and definitely change that ratio favorably in the direction of increased employee engagement. So with that said, let's talk about why you guys are here. So Vendor Management 101. Vendor management is a term that describes all of the activities that involve managing relationships with your company's vendors along each step of the vendor management process. Pretty simple, pretty clean. There really isn't a lot to it. However, it's almost deceptively simple. There's a lot more involved in vendor management than you'd think, specifically in the activities portions. So taking a look at different vendor management activities, you have researching vendors, obtaining quotes, negotiating contracts, managing the relationships, assigning jobs, evaluating contract performance, and ensuring payments. Each of these requires a certain amount, not a certain amount, a great deal of time investment from the people in your company. So for one thing, you want to make sure that you're getting the best vendors possible. You don't want to be working with subpar vendors who potentially don't have the best reputation, whether that's because they have poor customer service, whether that's because they deliver poor products, or maybe it's just because they're overcharging for the product that they're offering. Or they have predatory practices. Who knows? That's a huge thing. You need to be researching these sorts of things. Same goes with obtaining quotes. You need to be ensuring that you're getting a good quote, that you're looking over everything, that it matches with your expectation, that it falls in line with your budget, that what you're being quoted is what you actually need. So seeing that full line by line breakdown of what's involved in there and the services that they are planning to offer you. For instance, if you are subscribing to the Adobe suite, this is something we're going to be coming back to Adobe and their practices over and over again, because they're very predominant in the marketing industry. For those of you who don't know, the Adobe Creative Cloud is the most used, I don't want to say number one, but they're the most used creativity solution. So they do video editing, photo editing, sound editing, generally just their whole array for creatives and creative types. And one thing that they and one example that they have is that you can, they primarily offer the Creative Cloud in total, which contains their whole suite of programs. But most companies do default to getting that. However, as part of obtaining a quote and researching vendors, you need to take a look at that and you need to say, okay, so what does our company actually do? Do we need something to edit sound? Do we work with music a lot? Do we produce podcasts? Is that something we need? If not, well, maybe, okay, you can still get the whole Adobe Creative Cloud, but because the thing with the Creative Cloud is that you either get all of it or none of it. However, if you also take a look at it and you say, okay, well, we don't do a lot with photos, so we don't need Photoshop. Okay, so that's out. With the videos that we do, how much do we work with them? Well, we don't really do fancy effects. We just put up testimonial videos, or we just do VODs of events that we do. Okay, so we don't need After Effects. And working your way down that list and saying, okay, well, at the end of the day, we just need Premiere. So the quoted price of $70, say, for Adobe Creative Cloud is actually too much, when instead we could just be paying $20 to $25 for Premiere, which right there saves your company time and money. But that's still something that takes time, as you have to evaluate all of that. And especially because Adobe, when they're just offering the Creative Cloud to you, doesn't say what they are and aren't doing, what they are and aren't offering, what is available. So you need to look into that sort of thing. And you need to be able to have that information available to the decision makers in your company. Additionally, negotiating contracts, well, you can't really do that with Adobe. This is more for B2B practices, agreements that are just being drawn up. This again takes time because you're having to pass everything back and forth. You're having to interact with one another. You're trying, different parties want to add different things to the contracts, ensure that there are that everyone is getting what they want. And as I said, the essence of compromise is, no one's happy. At the end of the day, you still need to come to a compromise with that contract. And that takes time, and trying to trade things back and forth and ensuring that everyone is on top of the ball and making sure that everything is getting approved and renewed and everything within a timely manner is important, which again, that takes time. And a lot of times that's more of a menial task, making sure that everything is set up, reminding the right people, sending out the notifications, firing off that email, the newest version of the contract to whoever is responsible for reviewing it. It's just incremental steps that add up over time. Additionally, and then, part of negotiating contracts is managing those relationships. After you've implemented the contract and everything and saying, okay, well, we need to be interacting with one another. We need a record of how we're interacting with each other, because if someone promises one thing and then does not deliver on that other, you need an audit trail to back yourself up, because otherwise you're going to be facing legal challenges, which can be a big problem. Especially right now when times are tough, the economy is not exactly in the best place. You have to be avoiding a lot of these legal issues, especially because they can compound and stack up, and unfortunately, it just ends up costing your company time and money you can't afford to lose. Moving on from that, assigning jobs. Once a contract is in the implementation process, making sure that everyone involved knows what they need to be doing. This is also during the contract negotiation and different parts of the process. Everyone should know what their role is, what they need to be doing, and when they need to be doing it. And taking the time to manually assign that out and notifying the right people, setting everything up, putting all of the workflows in place. Again, it takes time and it's difficult to do. And there's a lot of points where human error can enter the process. Additionally, evaluating performance. Again, this is another thing where human error can come in because someone misses a contract, someone misses a digit, someone, I don't know, ignores something, who knows? Well, if you're not able to, somehow that screws up the overall report of your contracts, whether it's a specific contract or your contracts as a whole. And suddenly you don't have all of the information you need to be making informed decisions regarding your vendors. So saying, okay, well, we've actually only spent this much on this vendor. So going forward, we can continue to work with them. Someone's put in the wrong thing. The information isn't right. Something's going on. And then suddenly you are incurring a larger cost than you anticipated originally. And then finally, ensuring payments. This is a big one. You need to be, if someone's rendering you services, you need to be paying. And while you wouldn't ever go ahead, well, no company ever would ever not pay by choice. Well, at least you'd hope so. There are times when you can miss it. When something comes up, things get hectic and suddenly someone forgets to send the wrong thing. While a lot of people do have auto payments set up, it's not necessarily the case for smaller to mid-sized companies. So it's really a mixed bag. So essentially, vendor management activities are actually quite expansive, take a ton of time, and really trying to figure out a way to cut down on that time, make it more efficient, eliminate that human error can be pretty important. So moving on to the actual vendor management process, walking it through each of the different steps. So at the start of the vendor management process, when you are soliciting a vendor, when you are looking at attempting to purchase something, whether it's, the Adobe Creative Cloud, or you need new office chairs, or you just need new pens, even just something as simple as that, you're still going to walk through this process. It's going to be informal. Certain parts are going to be faster than others. But at the start, you're going to need to determine and define your needs. After that, you need to create guidelines for vendor engagement. So going back to the pen example, everyone in the office needs pens. Well, a pretty simple guideline, I'm pretty sure it's just, you don't even need to say it out loud, is going after a $500 ballpoint pen for everyone in the company engraved with their name is not exactly an option. So having those guidelines, even if they're informal as they are, they exist and you need to establish them. And as you are anticipating spending more money, the more important the need is, you need to spend more time on this and really write this out and hammer it home that to the people who are going out and selecting vendors. Moving on from here, it's the actual vendor research portion. This can either take a long time or a short amount of time. The internet offers a breadth of information, so you can figure out anything about a company. You can determine its history, its founder. You can figure out what the name of the founder's dog is. So there's a ton that goes into this process because you want to be making the most informed decisions possible. You don't want to be working with a company that has recently been in the news for defrauding people, is currently facing a class action lawsuit, has poor reviews, those sorts of situations. After you've researched everything, compiled all of that information, it's time to actually select your vendors. This is pretty simple. You just go over all of the information that has been presented and you choose the best quote. This can either be incredibly fast if there aren't a lot of potential vendors, or it can be excruciatingly difficult as you're trying to weigh the pros and cons of different companies who have incredibly similar products, but one has a slight edge, the other doesn't, and vice versa. So really, again, time. And this can especially be difficult if you don't have a way to really effectively visualize this information and compare it. Because the thing is you can see lines on an Excel sheet and you can switch back and forth between them, and but the thing is that the more you stare at the numbers, the more they just become numbers. They just become little squiggles on the screen. Having graphs that you can directly compare to, being able to put them side by side and take a look at them and say, okay, well, these This is the pros, this is the cons. Here are the different points where they differ, and here's the actual final decision that we want to do. So again, visibility, transparency, super important. Moving on from that, after you've selected the vendor you want to work with, it's the contract negotiation process. Again, this is probably the longest part of the whole vendor management process. Aside from implementation, but contract negotiation is also the most variable. Sometimes someone sends you a contract, you look over it, everything's fine, you're good to go, or the contract is not negotiable, that sort of thing. Other times it can be excruciatingly long. You're trying to determine what you want. There are certain things that people won't budge on, and it's difficult, and you don't want to, and it can take time, and especially because different people have to be on the ball. They have to for reviewing contracts, for approving them, for sending them off to the right people, for editing them, for getting them in on time, for meeting those deadlines. And again, that's just a human error thing, and that can be a big issue. Moving on from that, contract implementation, putting the contract in motion and monitoring it as it goes along. So the performance of it, is everyone delivering on what they're supposed to be delivering on? Is it performing to expectations? This is important. You need to be tracking this. You need to be tracking this information specifically so that when you go into the seventh part and final part of the vendor management process, which is the end of the contract and the renewal step. Because if you don't have this information and you go into that section and you say, okay, well, how did it perform? No one's quite sure. And it turns out it was awful, but there's a certain status associated with it. Someone says, okay, well, I think it worked. I think we're good to renew it. And then you renew it and you incur a cost for something that you're not necessarily using. Or you run into a situation where you're coming up on the end of a contract, you're not using it, but no one's really thinking about it or talking about it. And then you meet a certain date and it suddenly auto renews and you're incurring a cost for something you're not using. Because that's the thing, a lot of these companies have auto renew clauses in their contracts, like specifically going back to the example of Adobe. They have an auto renew in their clause in their contracts, where if you subscribe to the Adobe Creative Cloud, you are locked into a 1-year subscription. And in order to get out of that, you either have to pay off the entire, if you want to end it early, you have to pay off the entirety of the subscription remaining. And in order to not have it be renewed, you have a small period of time at the end of the contract, after the end of that first year that you use it, where you are able to cancel it without having to incur any fees or pay anything extra, which, while that's a smaller scale, it's only $70 a month, only $70 a month, that can stack up. And what if it's not just Adobe and $70? What if it's, say, a much larger vendor and it's $500 a month? Again, you need to be monitoring all of this. Everything needs to be as transparent as possible. So moving on from the vendor management process, let's take a quick look at some vendor management statistics that you should be considering. First of all, 57% of organizations don't keep an inventory of all the third parties with which they share sensitive information. This isn't something that we've really touched on up to this point, but your third parties, your vendors, they can put you at risk. If it, everyone remembers the Equifax scandal, everyone remembers, the different breaches in Apple, different breaches in Google. They're huge, and they can affect you, and they can affect your company's personal information, especially if the more sensitive information you store with these companies, with these vendors. Additionally, 57% of organizations aren't confident that their vendor management policies would prevent a data breach. So this is something that you need to consider internally. How are you storing this information? How are you keeping it at bay? What are you doing to keep everything safe? Are you using a system? Are you using manual processes? Are you keeping track of everything? Are you reviewing your, while this is something that doesn't necessarily fall under the purview of vendor management, are you reviewing your financials and your expenditures? So if someone does get, a hold of this information, you can see, well, someone does fraudulently get a hold of your information. You can track which companies you've placed information with, check in to see if there has been a breach, and then respond accordingly. Further on, according to a recent survey conducted jointly by CW and Arvo, 18% of respondents indicated that their companies work with more than 1,000 third parties, and another 16% said they work with more than 10,000 third parties. That is a lot of people to be working with. And to not have that, all of that information organized, to not have all of these parties organized, to not have a way to index and categorize them and keep track of them on a consistent basis is negligent. It's doing a disservice to you, and it's doing a disservice to your company and the employees that you work that work for you and with you. Moving on, 74% of companies do not know all of the third parties that handle their data and personally identifiable information. Again, that's a security risk. That's a big one. So having a system that allows you to keep track of all of that, again, it goes back to the point of you'd be negligent not to have that. Moving on, third-party breaches can cost more than in-house breaches, to the tune of $13 more per compromised record. That's the risk. That's your bottom line. It's going to hit you where you hurt the most. And finally, the average cost of a supply chain disruption is about $310,000. While this is more for, so this is more oriented towards supply chain management, vendor management is part of that. If something goes wrong, someone doesn't get the right payment, your vendor isn't supplying what it needs to be supplying, well, you can't get your job done. You can't get things done. Or you can, but it's heavily impacted how you do so, and has potentially caused you to incur costs that you would not necessarily have incurred otherwise. So with all that said, that's where vendor management software comes in. It's a vendor management system is any application that facilitates the vendor management process. And it can help you in 5 different ways. It can help you reduce risks. It can help you decrease costs. It helps you by, automating processes. It increases your efficiency, and it improves your vendor relationships. So these are the 5 major ways. So kind of taking a look at these in depth. First of all, reduced risks. It increases your transparency by making all of your vendor information readily available. You can keep track of everything involved with it. All of the, if your team is adequately entering the information, you can pull it up, access it really quickly, see everything you need to know, move on. Notifications remind you of important dates like expirations and renewals, which again, going back to auto renew clauses in contracts. Or taking a look at at vendors and saying, okay, well, do we need to keep working with this person? Do we not? Should we end this? What do we need to do to end this contract? Moving on, a centralized system allows you to create detailed audit trails. You can see who's accessed the information, when they accessed the information, what they accessed, what they've done with it, any changes they've made. That way, if there is any issues going on in your organization, if there's an issue on your part, you can identify the party responsible in your company and hold them accountable for what they've done. Or, also you can go to a company and if there's a issue vendor side, you can go to that vendor and say, okay, no, we've done everything we're supposed to do. There's no way this issue could be coming from our side. What's going on over there? How do we rectify this in a way where we're not having to pay more money? And finally, user control allows you to restrict who can access what based on qualifications. While we've talked more about third-party risks and everything involved with that, you still need to be keeping control of who can access your vendor contracts within your organization so that the right people and the right qualified people are accessing the information, because otherwise you risk breaking compliance. And especially if you're working, like, say, in healthcare or in the field of law, that sort of thing, these highly confidential documents, you need to be making sure that the right people are accessing them. Otherwise, you could be at risk for lawsuits, government fees, that sort of thing. Moving on from reduced risks, decreased costs. So again, going back to the increased visibility, it allows you to track costs and cut unneeded ones. So while it's not a full expense sheet, you're not going to be covering things like employee salaries and that sort of thing. You are still covering stuff like, okay, well, how much did we buy for the office? How much did we buy? What supplies have we bought? Where are we buying them from? We bought this back in September. Are we doing anything with this? No, then we need to stop buying it. And it can help you save costs going forward. Moving on, it also allows you to track those vendor contract terms, no more auto renewals. Again, going to harp on that a lot. A lot of companies have those in there. Knowing when you need to be checking on those, knowing what you need to do to prevent those auto renewals, and nipping them in the bud if you're not continuing to use the product can definitely help you a lot. Furthermore, it provides you information that you can use to negotiate better rates with ongoing vendors. So this is more for ongoing vendor relationships, people you've been working with for the course of like months, years, or decades at some point. You can take a look at it and you can say, okay, well, we're not actually using this. This specific service that you're offering, this specific product that you're offering as part of this package, but we've been working with you for several years. Would you be willing to eliminate this, potentially lower our price, and we can continue to work together because you know that we're a loyal customer and we're going to continue to work with you, which builds up that rapport between the two of you so that you could potentially go in and make special requests later on if you wanted to append anything to the current vendor contract. And finally, you're not having to pay regulatory fees by keeping track of everything, by having that audit trail, by maintaining compliance. You're not having to pay thousands or potentially millions of dollars for it, for breaking the law, for breaking a contract. You're not having to pay legal fees for a lawsuit. Again, kind of hammering in that point, but it's an important point. Moving on to automated processes. A big one is, it eliminates human error. Well, it can't eliminate it, but it helps. You can get rid of a lot of the issues where someone reviews a contract or someone reviews a quote and doesn't send it on to the right person, or they send it to the wrong person. Instead, you can keep track of all of that, and the system and automated workflows will come in. And once someone has indicated that they performed their task, it immediately moves it on to the next step. And whoever is assigned that is immediately gets a notification saying, hey, you need to do this, due by this date, get going. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Additionally, it can help remove the need for manual data entry. So instead of having to format everything within an Excel sheet and copy everything over, you can instead, a good vendor management system will instead offer you prompts you can build templates within it to respond to prompts where it'll automatically sort out all of this information, plug it into the right point so you're not having to enter it in over and over and over again. And instead, because it's all stored within that one central system where each of the different functions talks to one another, you're not having you're able to cut out that really menial task. Additionally, the automated processes, it automatically creates notifications when people are assigned tasks so they know what they need to be doing. It'll send them up. You can set it up so that it'll send them updates so they can say, okay, well, it sees that you haven't done this. 3 days out from task due date, it's not been done. Okay, get a notification. You need to be doing this. And then when they, on the due date, they'll get a notification. And then if they don't do it, the relevant person in the organization will get a notification that, hey, this person has not performed their task. What's going on? So it gives you that so it allows you to create that accountability within your organization and your vendor management process. And again, it'll also send you important notifications at important dates in a contract. So the renewal date, when you need to be reviewing it, at specific points specified in the contract. So, hey, when do we need to be having these meetings on this matter with this person? Again, just getting rid of a lot of that human error and being able to schedule a lot of this out in advance allows you to save time, which, touching on that, increased efficiency. A vendor management system allows you to increase onboarding speed and allows you to implement contracts sooner. What I mean by that is that you can create templates for different types of vendors. So one-time vendors, recurring vendors, semi-recurring vendors, whatever that looks like with your company. And you start with that template and you enter in all of that information. And instead of having to run through everything, create the same, create wholly new contracts each time, you work from those templates, get everything going. And instead of having to, wait a month, it's maybe a week. It also measures your vendor activities and allows you to say, okay, well, do we actually need to be doing this? It's wasting time. We can actually just cut this out completely, move on, skip over this, instead of having someone manually review, maybe having multiple people review it, you can say, okay, well, we actually only need one person to review this because the other people aren't really contributing anything meaningful. So just direct everything to this one person. They'll review it, they'll approve it, move on. Additionally, search functionality, being able to search the entirety of your vendor management system for a specific contract, whether that's by the contract name, party name, what's being offered or price, super important. And being able to just go into the search bar and say, okay, well, I'm just looking for this, instead of having to scroll through lines and lines in an Excel spreadsheet, or doing Control F and having to find the exact spelling. And finally, real-time reporting. It allows you to track vendor data as it's happening, and allows you to react sooner if there are any problems going on. If something is at high risk, you can take steps to mitigate that. And it basically just allows you to be more reactive, responsive, and fluid. And finally, improved relationships. This is pretty important. Having these smooth processes allows you to increases a vendor's opinion of you and allows you to build stronger, long-lasting relationships because they know you're reliable. And again, it goes back to having that reliability, having that rapport with them can help you in the negotiation process. Potentially say, hey, we're a loyal customer. We work well with you. We're not going to run out on you. We're not going to miss a payment or anything. Do you mind if we modify this service? And the thing is they're more likely to provide that custom service to you if you have that strong relationship with them. Additionally, vendor data allows you to ensure that vendors are actually delivering on their promises. This is important. If you're not keeping track of that, which is a basic part of the vendor management process, you're being negligent and you're hurting your company's bottom line, because then you're just wasting money and on something that you're not even getting. So again, going back to that point, just keeping track of that and being able to say, hey, we've not received this in 2 days. We were supposed to receive this like 3 days ago, actually. What's going on here? Additionally, allows you to ensure you're not missing payments. Again, going back to you don't want a lawsuit. No company really if you have a great vendor and you've missed payments and they don't want to work with you anymore because they've had to sue you to get you to pay for the things that they're offering. Yeah, that's a bad look, because that goes on to brand reputation. If vendors are if you're missing payments, if you are screwing up a process, people don't want to work with you for that. And the more vendors don't want to work with you, the more they talk. Well, they might not talk a lot. They still talk with one another. There's still kind of attitudes within the industry. And if you're going to them and they look at you and they say, okay, well, we you're not worth the effort. We don't want to work with you. So not only are you hurting your just your individual relationship with that vendor, you're hurting your reputation within your industry. And again, going back to that, hurting your bottom line. So those are the benefits of a VMS. We're really quick going to take a look at what you should be expecting from a VMS system. So real quick, we're going to go over to our vendor management. And so right now, this is Doc365's combined contract and vendor management system. Now, we do offer individual contract management systems and individual vendor management systems, but we don't recommend getting them individually. It should be an all or nothing situation, because the thing is you need to be taking a holistic look at your expenditures and your profit and your expenditures. Just having a customer contract management system allows you to see what's, the money coming in, and having an individual vendor management system allows you to see the money going out, but you're having to switch back and forth between platforms to compare the two. Instead, it's better to use an integrated contract and vendor management system so that you can have a holistic look at that. While it doesn't track things like, employee salaries, like we were saying earlier, it still allows you to keep an accurate budget of your general costs, and allows you to say, okay, well, this is the budget we have for vendors and we can change that based off of the money that we have coming in from X number of contracts. With that kind of aside, taking a look at the system itself, first of all, any system you're looking at needs to look good. And as part of that aesthetically pleasing appearance, it needs to have a dashboard. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Most have it, but a lot of them don't have a, kind of a holistic dashboard that shows you everything that you're looking at. So for example, you can see, okay, right now we have, okay, so these are the contracts that are the number of contracts that are going to expire. Here's that breakdown. Here's the total value of all of our active contracts in the system. This includes vendor contracts and customer contracts, and accounts for them separately so that you can have a good look at where you're at with each of these. You can also see the total number of active contracts within your organization and the total number of parties that you have contracts with or that you're engaging with. You don't necessarily have contracts with them, but the total number of parties that you're working towards contracts with. You also can see the total contract value. So here is a simple graphical breakdown that gives you a visual representation, not just a numeric representation. So it gives you a sense of scale and perspective. And finally, you can see the breakdown. So contracts by type. So right here, you've got construction, facility maintenance, janitorial service, computer repair, really just a full breakdown of what you're doing with these contracts. And finally, what stage they're at. So you can see, okay, the overwhelming number in their drafts. Here are the ones in progress. We're still working on this one. These are the ones that have been rejected, and here are the ones that have been approved. Pretty simple. Allows you to, it gives you that overall top-down look that you really need to be making informed decisions. But not only does it give you a top-down look, you need to have a system that gives you a line-by-line breakdown that essentially shows you everything. So taking a look at that, going into here under the party tab, so you can see all of the different people that you have contracts with, and all so specifically looking at each different party. Okay, so this is the party, this is their name. You've provided a rating for them. So, this allows you can say, okay, we actually like working with this person. We either do or don't like working with this person. Currently they're at a 3. You can see what type of service they're doing. So just a general breakdown of their details and everything, but you can also see all the documents associated with them. So you can readily access these as needed. So you can, so if you're having a meeting, if you're having a conversation with someone, you can say, okay, well, we need, I think it was something in this document attached to this contract for this party. Well, you can immediately just jump into the system, go into the search up that party. So you can say, okay, well, we want to do First Bergen Bancorp. You're right here, party 576. And here are all of the documents associated with them. So going back, exiting search, going back to party. Here you can also see all of the contacts associated with that. So you can see who everyone is talking to, who you need to be talking to, because, Kelly Ryder, if you're specifically working with the contract portion, this is the person that you're going to want to be talking to. Maybe not necessarily Alex Joseph, who's there with digital marketing, unless it's having to do with the actual, a marketing plan that you guys are working with. Again, that's based off of what you're doing with the contract, what you're doing with that vendor. And here you can see the actual contracts themselves. So it's a kind of overall top-down look at it. So you can see, okay, what's the name? What type is it? Is it active? Is it disabled? When is it effective? When does it expire? And is there a risk to it? You can actually set up different tiers for risks. Currently in our default demo environment, we have it for low, medium, and high. However, you can have that, you can customize that to completely fit your needs. But one thing you can do is you can actually take a look at the contract itself and see a full breakdown of the vendor contract. So you can see the actual quotes associated with it. So you can see, okay, so we're looking at a body scanner, and we're also looking at unknown. but it's definitely something would be put in its place. You can actually see line items, so a complete breakdown of it. So you can take a look at that and you can say, okay, do we actually, we're getting a new air conditioner from this person. We're also getting Dynamics ERP. Do we need Adobe Photoshop from them? Moving on, you can actually see the total budget. So a comparison of the expenditure in that contract compared to your total budget for that period, and allows you to currently see, okay, well, can we afford this? Yes. Okay, we're good to go. All of the documents associated with the contract. So, the risk management plans, specifications, quote details, pretty simple. You can actually also have these stored as templates up here. So instead of having to say, okay, well, we need to come up with a new risk management plan, we need to come up with a quality control plan, you can build out these templates, select that, create a new copy of that template, and then work from within there. Pretty simple, pretty easy. You're not having to build something completely new every time. You also want to have workflows in here. Automated workflows, they're pretty, they should be pretty standard. Again, so you have like the proposal of the idea, initial review, completed requirements, request review. All of these are in here. You basically just say, okay, you determine who is involved, when it needs to be done, when it, sorry about that. Are there any documents associated with it? And then you just you just plug it in, fire, go. Pretty simple, pretty easy. You can also set up notifications. So essentially, hey, depending on the contract, this is the date that the contract ends. Who needs to be taking a look at this? This is the date that we have in here for this meeting with this person. Do we have something scheduled for this? It's that transparency, and it's kind of eliminating that human error, because it's not leaving things up to chance. It's not leaving things up to someone remembering to do something by chance. It's plugging everything in, getting everything, all of the information in here, so that it can then work and direct people to where they need to be going. Additionally, you can take a look at, you can add notes. So these can be review notes, customer review notes, that sort of thing. Really just have that information in there. So an ongoing log of what's going on, what people are doing, how long they're doing it, that sort of thing. And finally, you want to have have this tab dedicated to just renewals. So basically what the contract is, who the vendor is, when it's effective, when it expires. Pretty simple, really easy to access. The big renewal tab makes sure that everyone's able to see it, so that there's no issues where someone's like, well, I didn't know when this was supposed to be happening. Because really that's the point of a vendor management system. It's accountability and removing, it's accountability and automating the process, making sure that everything is happening and everything's chugging along with minimal interruptions. And so that's really what you should be expecting from a vendor management system. If it doesn't have any of that, you should probably be looking somewhere else. So with that, I'm opening the floor up to any questions. Does anyone have any questions about the benefits of a VMS, what it does, what they should be looking for, that sort of thing? Feel free to either unmute yourselves and ask the question, or ask them in the chat. All right, it seems like there aren't any questions. So with that said, this is the end of the webinar. I have been Quentin. This is MyDoc365. If you'd like to schedule a talk with us at some point in time, either for a free demo, or you just have more questions about our vendor management system, you can reach out to us at info@mydoc365.com. Our phone number is 904-309-9970. Again, this has been Quentin with MyDoc365. I hope you all have a great day.